Good evening, everybody. Welcome here to race number 10 of the second season of the UpperEdge Racing Baadteshop Superspeedway series as we get set to take to the high banks of iRacing Superspeedway. It is the third time this season that the drivers will take to this 3-mile superspeedway. Wide enough to hold them 6 wide, and that's not even utilizing the apron, which is not considered out of bounds in this series. I'm Seth Cole, and last time out, we did it a little bit unorthodox, but it was so cool, we decided to do it again. Driver and commentating here tonight. Matthew Rodriguez joins me in the booth, and Matt leading us to green this time here as well. Now, I don't want to jinx anything, but last time out when we did this, you started the race from 5th place and finished in 5th place. Tonight you're starting on the pole, so maybe we can work a little bit of mojo here and have you finish where you start again, second week in a row.
Look at me, I'm on the TV. But no. Obviously, last race out of Talladega was not the ideal result that I had hoped for. I was hoping to sneak through a little bit more. Hoping for a little bit better result this week and hoping not to be a bulldozer, but iRacing Superspeedway is just such a unpredictable track where you can go literally 10th to first, and that's what I'm fearing. Looking back, some of the guys back in the field like Bronson Stafford, David Durand, those type of guys I'm worried about.
Yeah, we've got 10 drivers that are going to roll off the grid here this evening. We've seen fields upwards of almost 20 drivers, about half of that here tonight. But just something I've kind of observed week after week, even when we've got the smaller fields, sometimes even those type of fields are very unpredictable.
Absolutely, and that's the big thing where it's... Oh.
Must have some radio controlled things going on right here. So quickly, the rest of the field that you didn't see there on that grid, David Durand, Bronson Stafford in row 4, and Jason Shuey and Dylan Body back completing the top 10 as getting ready to go racing here tonight in the NSRA 165. 55 laps of racing here tonight in the third to last race of the season.
Absolutely. And you see everyone just thundered down the straightaway. See Michael Norman almost trying to hook me in Joey Chapman there on the high side. But that's what we're going to see is a lot of tandems tonight. You're going to see a lot of tandems with that top and bottom lane. That bottom lane primarily is going to be the strongest lane on track.
And I'm not sure exactly what it is about iRacing Superspeedway in particular, but it seems like at tracks like Daytona and Talladega, it's a lot easier to be able to line up the bumpers, especially in the corners. Seems like it's very difficult to line up front bumper to rear bumper.
Absolutely, and that's the big thing where it's not like some of these cars are mismatched, but it almost feels like they are mismatched, and you kind of have a little bit of apprehension about pushing it. Honestly, I really think that the temperature and how the cars feel are two of the biggest things, and how the setup feels. So that's going to be the big thing, is just trying to see if, obviously, you can push.
Joey Chapman looks like he's going to try and lead the first lap, but David Durand, big push up the middle. The Coca-Cola, I should say. I was going to say Pepsi Max. That would have been the wrong brand for sure. The Coca-Cola Zero Chevrolet leading that lap as Robert Kenny now jumps down to the inside. So lap 1 led by the 24 car. Another thing about the unpredictability of the smaller fields that we might also see come into play in this race today is the fact that really only 3 drivers mathematically look like they're going to be in the hunt for the championship by season's end. Bronson Stafford, 75 points over Robert Kenny, and with Mike Tellier picking up the last victory back couple of weeks ago at Talladega. He's now only 89 points back, so everybody else here in the field, yourself included, kind of a go for broke attitude. Just try and get a checkered flag or two before the end of the season with no championship, at least it seems right now, hanging in the balance.
That's a big thing where everyone's kind of had the same mindset of keep Bronson Stafford out of victory lane. And that's going to be the big thing, which is obviously you got the teammates working together, but even as Bronson said, really, it seems like his own teammates are collaborating against him, and as one of his teammates, I can agree.
Yeah, so far this season, it has definitely been Sky Motorsports that have been able to park the Toyotas in victory lane. 3 wins for Robert Kenny, Bronson Stafford, and Mike Tellier, 2 wins apiece. As we're going to tandem on the top side there, that's the Durands, the Chevrolets of Justin and David. There's been a couple of guys this season that I've been looking at that haven't yet been able to get a victory in this series. That at 29 seems to be up there consistently in the top 5 week after week. Sometimes he's not able to close out the deal. We know the unpredictability of the final laps of Superspeedway racing, and the guy there as well, second on the inside line, Joey Chapman. Those are just a couple of guys that seem to always be running up at the front. They just haven't been able to close out the deal. Does the sense of urgency get greater for these guys as we get closer to the end of the season, or are they basically just doing it race by race, knowing that there is a third season on the horizon?
I mean, even, listen, personally for me, I kind of have that whole thing where you want to end off every season with at least one win. Obviously, you want to win them all. But even if you can't win them all, you at least want to win one of them. So you say, hey, some of these guys kind of take that for pride. I mean, look at Robert Kennedy, look at Mike Tellier. They have won every single season. And they keep that in pride of going into season 4. They want to keep that streak going. And you don't want to be the guy who has that streak broken because it makes you feel a little bit worse inside. And you want to go out proudly and say, listen, I'm always up there every week. And I win every season.
Still side by side. Toyota's on the bottom. Chevrolet's on the top. Yeah, make that third line. Why not? Let's see if Stafford's going to go with you. He's got Mike Tellier pushing him.
He doesn't love me.
Oh, nope. He's going to go 4 wide with you. Well, it was a valiant attempt. I would have done the same thing there, but unfortunately going to drop it back. Looks like Stafford, though, with Mike Tellier. That's
why I like Dollar Tree.
This particular track, though, I mean, we have seen this move pulled off, I think, more times than not by Bronson Stafford and Mike Tellier, where they kind of just hang at the back of the lead group, formulate that run, generate the speed, and then are able to just bypass everybody in a 2-car tandem to get to the front. I've been really surprised more and more drivers have not adopted that strategy.
Yeah, here's the thing. A lot of these drivers don't have that level of trust in the field where, look at guys like Dylan Body, where, I mean, he started out with a lot of teammates, but it seems like all those teammates kind of evaporated. You kind of don't trust a lot of guys in the field, and some of these guys may have ulterior motives, where you got the guys like the Durans. The Durans, they have that level of trust. They can easily go back and do it, but obviously they want to be up at the front of the field. They want to start leading laps. They are, or at least David, even a long shot for the championship, but you want to go out and dominate these races. And honestly, that's their strategy, and it's worked. Why deviate it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you were the one that put this point system together and everything. You mentioned about David Durand, and let's mention Justin Durand as well. Those guys would be considered, theoretically, the long shots to maybe have enough races to get back into the hunt. About 208, 209 points for those drivers, respectively. I mean, what do those guys have to do, in your opinion, to be able to get into the hunt? Can they rely on just one win and a consistent finish next week, or do they have to pretty much have back-to-back wins heading into the finale?
I mean, for the guys who are long shots, not like the Robert Kennys and Mike Telliers, but really the guys outside that big 3, they need to go out and win every week. And some of those guys who are further back, they need to have the top 3 guys have issues. And we saw both at Daytona, Talladega, those guys have issues. And they do have issues from time to time, and it's really how you capitalize on that. Where that's been Robert Kennedy and Mike Tellier's biggest issue, that they have not been able to capitalize when Bronson has a failing, because usually, since they're always in such close proximity, they're caught in the same exact accident or same exact misfortune.
That's a great point. I think that that ended up happening a few weeks ago, actually, at Daytona back in mid-April. That very thing you're describing. Stafford had himself an issue, but Robert Kennedy, who was the guy that was going to be able to reap the rewards and close in on points, was also caught up in the same incident. Now, we know that when it comes to Superspeedway racing, drivers are as much diplomats as they are racers, kind of putting on the suit and saying, hey, you work with me here, I'll work with you there, and, you know, we'll be able to work our way to the front with this alliance. Looking at some of these guys that are long shots, is there any kind of diplomacy that's going on between them and other drivers of saying, hey, I'm a long shot here, I need help to be able to get to the front, to be able to win a race and be able to keep myself in the championship picture?
I'd like to believe that's what's going on between the Durans, but in total honesty, right now, a lot of people are racing for themselves, and they want to go out and win this, where, listen, some of these guys who are theoretical long shots, everyone else in the field knows they're long shots, and it's very unlikely that they'll be able to kind of claw their way back up. There's a crackpot chance, but that has a lot of unique circumstances, so we're going to try and go for a win. But for guys like, again, Robert Kennedy, Mike Tellier, those guys who are kind of on that bubble, you're going to see more guys trying to help them up the front of the field, because as much as everyone loves Bronson Stafford, we don't want him to see him win.
Tough thing is too, you know, when you're talking about Bronson Stafford, Robert Kenny, I mean, these guys have shown that they've got fast race cars, and usually everybody wants to work with a fast race car because that's going to help get them to the front of the field. So it's a kind of between a rock and a hard place when it comes to super speedway racing, especially this late in the season, knowing that you might be helping out your competition for the championship, but at the same time, you're helping yourself out also, as Joey Chapman dropping there to the back. And one thing I wanted to look at here real quickly was the weather for today. Sun's been bathed in track's been bathed in sunlight all day long, and there you see it. Only 80 degrees out there, but the track temperature high up in the triple digits, 123 degrees. And why that seems so prevalent to me is, you know, seeing you jumping out of line there, seeing Chapman jumping out of line. I mean, what are you guys looking at?
Wasn't by choice, actually. I got distracted a little bit.
Okay. But I mean, what are you guys looking at here for water temps and everything? I mean, obviously you guys can generate huge runs with the two-car tandem, but that pusher certainly going to have to keep an eye on the dial there, making sure that that water temp doesn't spike.
Realistically, we're looking for anything below probably about 260, 270. When it gets up to above that 250 mark, that's when we really start paying attention to it. And obviously, if we have a gauge red and blinking at us, that usually means, all right, we got to kind of make a plan here, immediately get out of line and kind of get some air to the nose. Thankfully, today, it hasn't been that hot. It seems like it's been about 80 degrees. And we haven't really had that clustered of pushing just yet. So I say, as we go further in the race, we'll start seeing maybe those temperature issues.
Gyro Cam on board with Michael Norman, really having to put in the work to kind of level it out with a high banking in the corner. So you can see on the bottom left there, those dials giving the indication of speed, oil temp, water temp. I mean, it's bad enough that you got to keep one eye out the windshield to make sure that you're pushing the car or being able to line up the bumpers with the car that you're trying to help progress to the front. Then you have to have another eye on your rear view mirror, making sure that you're throwing the block necessary or keeping yourself in line with where the momentum is. I mean, where's the third eye to be able to keep an eye on the dials?
Honestly, here's the thing where that's the reason that half of these gauges blink red, because some of these drivers, I mean, we're looking at our windshield, we're trying to look at our relative, we're trying to guess how some of these things work. And when we have that gauge flashing red, that's supposed to be our indication of, hey, idiot, look down here. You're about to blow up. Figure it out.
Field spread out now, single file, first back to around 6th, 7th place. I noticed that Stafford, Tellier, Kenny, they've kind of drifted back into their own little group, so we'll see when they decide to press the go button, maybe try and make one of those charges we've seen them do every time we seem to come here to iRacing Superspeedway. As topside, Joey Chapman, Michael Norman working together. Well, we didn't see Michael Norman in the race a couple of weeks ago. Subsequently, he dropped way out of the championship picture. He was 4th in the stands going into that race. Now comes into this race 6th. And look at this. Oh,
Nobody help me.
Oh, man. You know, we've talked about this the last couple of weeks. We've seen Mike Tellier and Robert Kenny out there with those airplane liveries, and you're supposed to have an airplane livery. You keep forgetting every week to put it on. Maybe more cars would work with you if you had it.
Yeah, you know, I'm starting to realize that, but like I said, I honestly just keep forgetting. It's in my inbox. I have it. I just haven't put it on the car.
Here comes that run we were talking about. Stafford and Mike Tellier, and woo! Stafford trying to take the momentum wherever it will carry him. To the inside of Butte, to the inside of Norman. He did lead
Did
that
a whole
lap.
lot of nothing.
Oh, man, look at Tellier up there, high, wide, and handsome, 4 wide. I mean, definitely just, I think maybe just trying to time those runs to see, you know, if it gets down to the end of this race.
And that's what you'll notice Bronson doing, where he will fly up to the front of the field and he'll drop on back because he's just playing around. He's trying to figure out, hey, when it comes last lap, where do I need to be? And you'll notice some guys, probably as we go later in the race, probably about lap 20, lap 30, there'll be some guys following him back to the back of the field. And they'll be testing out that, trying to see, like, all right, he's got something going on here. It's just who is observant enough to see it.
Thing, though, that you have to bear in mind, though, is we were on lap 12 when that move was made. We get closer to the end of this race, he's not going to be able to make that move quite as easily. There's going to be some pretty hefty blocks thrown.
Yeah, that's the big thing, and you always got to worry about that last lap block. I think we got a lot of replays of those last lap blocks.
Now, I don't know if you can see it. I barely caught it there.
I can see that red banner on the back of Norman's car.
Okay, well, let's move on to a different subject then and talk about that car that's kitty corner left to you. Mike Tellier, is there damage on that rear bumper? Has he had the heck shoved out of it with that thing?
Yeah, I did notice he had a little bit of damage. I'm not sure if he got in the wall or really just someone pounded him, but knowing Bronson Stafford, he probably ended up just pushing a little bit too hard, maybe just knocked in a fender. Let's say it's not uncommon.
You're closer than I am, so maybe you can spot any yellow paint on the back bumper potentially. Then we'll know who it was that that got into the back of him.
Let me leave my lap.
He's trying. He's got Kenny with him, and he is going to lead this lap. It looks like.
Oh, I was gonna turn myself off Kenny's nose if he denied me that. So
half a car length. Got yourself that lap lead. There you go. As Robert Kenny now going to dive down to the inside, and he'll take the race lead over into turn one. So far, some hard racing, but clean racing. Really haven't seen anything yet that has looked like it'd be even close to bringing out a caution. So
and you got to think of Talladega. I mean, Talladega was really one of our first caution-free races, and a lot of guys were kicking themselves. Like, I mean, I'm so happy it was caution-free, but man, I wish it would have happened on a different week where I didn't fall off the pack.
Yep, exactly.
And that's what I'm worried about looking at Bronson Stafford and Joey Chapman that far back. I know they can make it up. They're good enough drivers, but obviously you got that thought in the back of your mind of what happens if this goes wrong.
So what are we thinking about for potential green flag pit stops? Just how far do you guys think you'd be able to go? I mean, could you split this 55 lapper in half, come down pit road around lap 27, 28?
So realistically, that's what I think a lot of people are going to end up doing, which is coming down pit road around that cutoff mark. I could say the fuel window is probably anywhere from lap 25 to lap 30, and honestly, depending on your big savers, they could possibly go to lap 31, 33 if they've saved enough, but I don't. How we all are racing at the moment, I do not see that happening.
Well, you were talking about those drivers that fell back. We just barely had in our shot 8th place Mike Tellier, who was almost 3 seconds behind, and then it's about 4.5 seconds behind to Bronson Stafford and Joey Chapman. There you see them just on that latter half of the screen. So yeah, we'll see if they're going to be able to make their way back up. Obviously, we know that the two-car tandem is strong, but I would think you need at least just a little hint of draft from the lead pack to be able to work with it as well.
And that's a big thing where those two cars can generate a lot of draft, and these cars do give off a lot of wake where you can catch it from about a second back, which is very unusual for a lot of these NASCAR-styled cars. But that is the next big thing where you kind of have to be within general range. And that's what I'm worried about. If, let's say, Joey Chapman has an issue or Bronson Stafford has an issue and drops off the field, well, now you're a sitting duck back there, and you're now in kind of a catbird seat to go a lap down. And you never want to be in that position.
Well, that last time by, the tandem of Stafford and Chapman were a half second faster than the lead pack. And they are... yeah, they're beginning to close up. It was about 4.5 seconds last I checked. They're now sub 4 seconds, around 3.8. So they are closing in, but...
I mean, I will say it openly. The precedent has been set about how you're going to block. I mean, we had an incident earlier this season that really the precedent was set of if this is how we're going to race, this is how everyone else is going to get raced. So I would not be surprised to see a last lap block thrown.
The only issue I have with the strategy they're playing back there, though, yes, they are producing the speed, but that's with the 60 running behind the 61. At some point, they're going to have to swap with the 61 behind the 60, and I just don't know from that far back if they're going to be able to keep the momentum going forward with having to make that transition, that transfer.
Yeah, and that's a big thing where I'm looking for a lot of these guys, and a lot of these guys have set partners that they've picked out. I mean, here's the thing. You look for people who are generally friends where, listen, I work with Kenny a lot. So Kenny's usually one of my first choices. I mean, look at Michael Norman. I love working with Norman, besides the times that he tries to turn me into the outside wall. But again, it's people that you can generally see who they work with, and it's breaking up those formations. Where, hey, if you see myself and Kenny start getting together, you're going to start looking to break up our combination, saying, all right, we need to get in between them. We need to knock them offline. Or same thing with Bronson and Mike. Bronson and Mike are another combination that I really work out for. And those are two guys that you really have to break up and get away from each other to kind of equalize it.
Talking about Robert Kenny, that number 10 right behind you right now. A different livery this week. We've been documenting about the last month and a half about himself and Mike Tellier running the German dive bomber liveries, but only Mike representing Germany here tonight. We've got Kenny in the, I don't know, is that a zero livery? No, I don't think that's a zero, but it is a Japanese
I believe it is
livery.
a Japanese bomber.
A Japanese bomber, which, you know,
Which is,
I thought
it's really nice
this,
seeing a Toyota Camry with a patriotic scheme on, but I'd
you
say
know,
it's
it
a really
makes
odd
sense.
race. It's a really
It
odd
does
race
make
for it.
sense. Yeah, I mean, Toyota is a Japanese company. It's not a German company. I mean, Mike would have to be running, what, a BMW to be able to have it make sense or something?
I mean, we can add those in. There's always season 4.
Yeah, but I mean, it makes more sense when you think of Superspeedway racing, a kamikaze move rather than a dive bomb. You can get dive bombs at short tracks. You don't really get them at the Superspeedways. But then again, this is the Baadteshop Superspeedway series. I mean, anything can happen.
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking in my mirror right now, and I'm seeing that we got about a half-second gap on this rest of the field, and I'm wondering when they're gonna finally come up and just blow by us both.
Well, right now, still holding about a half second back to Justin Duran. Now the momentum's coming, starting to see the interval closing up. Justin, David lined up nose to tail. Michael Norman right there as well. A little update on that group of 3. They're closing. It was what, 3.5 seconds last time I checked? It is now 1 second. So watch for the momentum there with the 61.97 and 60. Here we go. You see him back there slicing and dicing, trying to make their way around Jason Shuey, Dylan Body, but they all got separated.
That's a big thing that you got to look out for. Those guys get separated, that entire run falls apart. And while on lap 21, that isn't that big of a deal, you got to think when it gets to lap 55, you get separated on that final lap and you lose your run. I mean, that is a huge, huge deal breaker.
Here comes Stafford. Big run to the top side.
He's got no help, though.
He's got no help, but he's got momentum. He might have you cleared here.
No,
nope,
no, God,
dropping
no.
back. Dropping back. Got to pick up Joey Chapman up there on the top side.
And that's the thing where you can see a lot of these guys playing nicely at the moment because if Bronson really wanted to get by us, he could get right on our quarter panels, really just drive us in and get that side draft and run off.
Now Kenny going to jump up to the top. There you go. There's the Aircraft Alliance there. The Axis powers, if you will.
I am slightly rethinking our treaty.
You are Switzerland right now.
Yeah, I feel like I've been betrayed.
Now Norman going to dive to the inside for 3rd place. So Kenny back out to the point. Mike Tellier in 2nd. We've kind of seen those two work together, and we've heard them in post-race interviews as well, realizing that they have to work together to keep Bronson Stafford out of victory lane. And
that's a such hard part of trying to make sure. I mean, the enemy of your enemy is my friend. But here's the thing: they both are racing for it. What in the world is Norman doing? But they're both racing for a championship, and it's trying to figure out who they aid and how they aid each other. I have no idea what Norman was doing, but that actually really threw me off.
So I'm almost wondering here, if you look at the stats coming into this one, Robert Kenny with 3 victories, Mike Tellier picked up a 2nd win a couple of weeks ago. If they're in this kind of a situation here, does Kenny push Tellier to another victory so that way they have 3 apiece, giving Mike Tellier, who's 3rd in points, a little bit more of an edge, get them both maybe an equal amount of points here this week?
I can see that. I can see that happening.
I was going to say, I would let you wait to answer that question. You had some pretty good side drafting.
Oh, no, I was getting some PTSD. He ran me up the track, so I figured I'd just run him down a little bit.
And now 3 wide down this back straightaway. Tellier going to go down below that yellow line. Not out of bounds. We got to keep reminding everybody about that. This isn't your normal Superspeedway racing where the drivers have to stay above that yellow line. They can utilize every bit of runoff down there that they want to, as this would be a good drag race back to the line. You got Chapman with you. Tellier's got Kenny with him. Who's going to get it? Looks like, oh, well, there's the end of that contest. I don't know if the 97 backed off or if you guys just had a heck of a run down that first half of the straightaway. But
really, it was the heck of a run. And really, I don't think a lot of guys were expecting that kind of front pack shuffle. So a lot of them got separated. A lot of them probably thought a wreck was about to break out. So they all backed off, and I see that whole single file snake to the inside.
Now, one thing that I'm noticing, at least here today, for the moment, obviously it could change as we're not yet halfway, but none of our Championship 3 are in line for bonus points in regards to most laps led or in regards to most positions gained from starting spot. Right now, the driver holding that would be Jason Shuey, and we've seen you out in front for a good portion of this race. I think Chapman was out in front for a good portion, so I don't think the 97-10 or the 61 at this moment in time would be in line for the most laps led bonus points as well.
And that's a big thing you wonder about, where you wonder, hey, is there team orders where, I mean, listen, if it's someone on that same team, are they going to pull out of the way so they can end up getting these bonus points? Where, I mean, here's the thing, I'm sure they'd appreciate if I got out of the way and they got the bonus points, but I also am here to win the race as well. And same as the other 9 people who are here, they are all here to win the race. So as much as we'd love to, maybe in the non-opportune times, to pull out of the way, we're here to win.
Does that make it tougher in Superspeedway racing for drivers that are in the championship, knowing that there are other guys out there that are going to do everything they can to be able to pick up a victory?
It does. I mean, you always got to kind of keep your eyes over your shoulder, because you don't expect your teammate to be one of the guys who would drive you into the corner to wreck you. And, you know, I'd like to believe that none of my teammates would do that. But when it gets down to a championship scenario, I mean, you kind of always have that thought in the back of your head that all chips are down, all hands are down, we're ready to go. So no one knows what's going to happen.
Well, we're getting close to that point. We were talking about nearing the halfway point. So the big question now is the strategy come down at halfway, or if you guys can go maybe another 3, 5, 7, I don't know how much fuel you guys have in the car. If you could stretch it as far as possible, do you maybe go as far as the fuel tank allows to come down pit lane and take on as less fuel as possible, have maybe a slightly shorter pit stop?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at, where I'm trying to figure out really what a lot of these guys' strategies are.
Breakaway of 4 cars, Tellier, Kenny Rodriguez, and Chapman. Then you got about maybe a little less than a second. Back to Jason Shuey, Dylan Body, Bronson Stafford and company. We'll be seeing when the hands are out the window for drivers to hit pit lane. And this, at least visually, this looks like maybe one of the easier pit lanes to get onto, because you're practically driving straight for a little bit before you get to that pit lane.
This pit road is
anyway.
highly deceptive, even, because you're looking at it and you're like, huh, man, it looks like the speed line is like right at the entrance of that wall, but no, the speed line's actually much further down, and you're looking for that other cone to slow down at.
20.
A lot of these guys coming in the pit road.
Whoa, we nearly had ourselves a wreck back there. Jason Shuey, Bronson Stafford, very close side drafting. Maybe a little contact between those two. It stalls out the 3, and now the Durans will look to take advantage on the top side. So close there to maybe having our first caution of the day right on the eve of our first round of pit stops. And here we go.
And that's where you got to look at, like, making sure you don't speed on pit road, as I'm almost about to.
Get that thing lowered down, Matt. Looks like you're good. Looks like you're good.
Yeah, no, it was a little heart attack, but I got it.
So we've got everybody on pit road. Nobody electing to stay out in extra laps. So now it's all about execution on pit lane here, and who's going to come out with who? I mean, will it still be one big pack once everybody drops the jack and heads out of pit lane? Of course, those that, well, there's a couple that may have overshot their pit boxes there. I believe the 3 overshot his box, the 29 overshot his box there, so that's going to cost a little bit of time.
We've had a huge uptake in green flag pit stops this last race, and a lot of these guys aren't used to these green flag pit stops, because we usually have a caution to bail us out right as soon as it's time to pit.
That's a great point. One thing I'm going to take a look at here, saw a little bit of cosmetic damage on a few drivers, not many, but interested to see if anybody elected to take on a fast repair here, and no, all 10 drivers electing not to utilize that mulligan, which they may end up needing before this race is completed. Tellier with the win off of pit lane, Kenny second, Stafford, Rodriguez, Chapman, that's the top 5, and I think there was about 3-second separation for the entire top 10 when they came down pit road. Leaving pit lane right now looks like it's doubled to about 6 seconds from race leader back to 10th place. So we'll see
if you're wondering, if you're really wondering why the big gap between these guys, I mean, you got to look at the top 4 here at the moment, which, including myself, the top 4 here at the moment, we did not take tires. We only took fuel. These fuel tanks only hold 75% fuel. So in that amount of time, it is quicker to get a 75% fuel drop than it is to actually take 4 new tires. And looking at our tire wear, the tire wear at iRacing Superspeedway is shockingly good. Where, I mean, you really don't have to replace tires unless you spin out at this track.
Which is really surprising to me, just as a spectator, because with the high banking that you guys have here, I would expect there'd be quite a bit of heat buildup in that right front tire. And then, of course, as well as we saw, a triple-digit track temperature for these cars here today as well. So you would think that there would be, at least on maybe the right sides, some semblance of tire wear.
You'd think. And yes, the right front is one of our hottest tires, about 190 degrees, about 200 degrees, but it's nowhere near that threshold of being worried about, because it's not overinflated in that right front. Even 55 pounds of air sounds like a lot of air, and it sounds in your mind like it would end up overheating. But shockingly, these tires that I think Odd Year has brought us is very, very durable.
Got 6 cars up in the lead group. We're looking here at 7th back through 9th. Michael Norman, Dylan Body, and Justin Durand. Now, Justin Durand, we know for certain overshot his pit box, had to back up. I think Norman might have done the same. And then Jason Shuey, right now on an island of his own, we know that he definitely overshot his pit box as well. So, like I said, it all came down to execution on pit lane. Who did it better were the ones that benefited with the track position we see now, and those that made mistakes now are in the realm of hoping for a caution. But again, you brought it up the couple of weeks ago, our last race. The likelihood of a caution was slim to none with the smaller field. I mean, unless someone makes a catastrophic mistake right now, it's not looking like that caution is going to come out to save some of the stragglers.
You know, I'm just sitting here and I'm watching this top 3, and it's kind of one of those things where you've got the 3 people who hate each other, and they're just kind of awkwardly laughing because they have to. And I kind of feel the tension here where it's, yeah, we're happy that as a team we're up here and we're kind of dominating this race, but it's a, man, I need one of you to wreck so I can gain some points.
Mike Teller going to jump out of line there and fall to the back of this lead group. So now Kenny has Stafford on his back bumper, and now Kenny's going to bail out and drop to the back. What's this cat and mouse game going on?
The big thing, which is I think a lot of these guys can't make it on fuel, which honestly,
nobody wants to lead.
When they started pulling out of line, I started looking at my fuel gauge, and I'm like, huh, man, we are really close.
Nobody wants to be the one to have that clean air to the nose and create the drop for everybody else, because as we know at a Superspeedway, that uses up more fuel. Now Chapman, who was running 5th in that line for most of the run after coming up pit road, he's going to have David Durand to his outside. And right now,
it may be a battle of attrition this race.
It very well maybe. It's a strange battle here of who does not want to lead. Normally, it's who wants to get up there to the front, but kind of passing the torch, if you will. Here, you lead. You use up some fuel. You use up some fuel. That's going to be some interesting mind games here down this home stretch. So, I mean, look at some of these guys that we talk about. Yourself, David Durand, Joey Chapman, who have nothing to lose. How much more conservative are you on the fuel strategy than maybe some of these other 3 up here that are battling for a championship?
I can easily tell you with full confidence that no one up here is looking to pit again. No one up here wants to pit again, because I know that the other guys who are following them have enough fuel and they are not planning to pit. And pretty much looking at if they're going to pit, that is a death sentence. They do not want to come in again. So the big thing is you're going to see a lot of these guys lift off the throttle. We're going to save a lot of fuel. And it's going to be the big thing of who wants to lead and who wants to save fuel.
I'll tell you what, all those strategy games going on amongst your top 6, that helped that trio that had lost the pack. Michael Norman, Justin Durand, and Dylan Body. They've got new life. Now it's made it a 9-car pack up here at the front, closing in on 20 laps to go. The mind game's going to continue, and I'm almost wondering, though, you guys up here in jeopardy right now as far as the numbers on fuel. Those 3 guys had to have not been saving at all to catch you, so they've got to have their numbers maybe even lower.
And that's what really would concern me, as more or less, if I was trying to play the crew chief spotter role, is are we going to make it to the finish? And that's the first question you need to ask yourself, which is, am I confident that I will make it to the finish on the current tank that I have? And right now, my answer, looking at my fuel gauge, is meh, maybe. I mean, kind of do a few spins and hope for the best. I mean, here's the thing. I think all these guys may like to see another caution. Even some of the guys who say, man, I would hate to see another caution right now and bunch the field back up. A lot of these guys say, man, I would wish for an extra gallon or 2 in my tank so I'd be a little bit more safe and I could actually go out there and fully race.
I mean, in all honesty, unless you are the cause of the caution, a yellow flag wouldn't necessarily hurt you, because all it would do is bring Jason Shuey up to the lead pack and make it a 10-car pack once again.
On the contrary, where, again, for some of these guys, let's say, look at Robert Kenny. If Robert Kenny stays up there for an extended period of time and he has to come down the pit, if I'm someone facing him in points, I'm loving that scenario because again, that's a guy out of my way. And think of any of the points guys up here who want a points position where, listen, if it was me up here, I'm basically a dead point where you can get a points position off me, and I think it's really a 5 points gap raise per position. So a lot of these guys are saying, hey, if that guy in front of me runs out, that's 5 extra points. That's more bonus points that could potentially be thrown my way. So again, it's a dangerous game.
That's a good point right there. Now, obviously, near the beginning of the season, when teammates are working together, if they're in this kind of a scenario, I'm pretty certain that they would be communicating of, I'm this much short, I'm this much short, and then when they end up hitting the number where they know they can make it, they notify their teammates, hey, I'm at this point now, I can make it the rest of the way, and they try and help the other teammates that are, maybe a little bit short on making it to the conclusion. But now, with the scenario that we talked about coming into this race, 3 teammates in the hunt for the championship, all of them looking for another victory this season. It's radio silence, right? There's no communicating of that, of, hey, I'm good to make it on fuel now. You got to keep your teammates, or in this case, your championship competitors, guessing.
That's the thing. A lot of these guys are counting their fuel numbers, where everyone's got a certain number that they can make. And right now, I'll even admit, I am not comfortable with my fuel number that I have.
Watching you guys down this front straightaway, and I believe that you guys are going anywhere from 5 to 10 miles per hour slower than we saw you guys going before you made that pit stop. So definitely the pace is backing off. Now Kenny's going to drop to the bottom here.
Everyone's resetting the carousel.
Yeah, I mean, this is an unusual scenario. I don't think we've seen this before, at least to my knowledge, in the Baadteshop Superspeedway
I'll be
series.
perfectly honest, fuel is tight. Fuel is tight within a lap where I think we're going to see some guys running out on the white flag.
So are you keeping an eye on where the number drops to maybe kind of figure out of, if I run out here, I'm going to have at least enough forward momentum to be able to make it back to the start-finish line?
Yes, obviously we have a number in our minds that we have, and we're trying to plan to where I'm burning this amount of lap or this amount of fuel per lap. This is how far this amount of fuel can take me. Basically by I can even pop open a calculator while I'm racing, and I can kind of punch it in, and I can figure, okay, I can probably make it about this far, or I can guess which straightaway I'm going to run out in, or what corner I'm going to run out in. And some of these guys, they do have tools like caps and racer apps, and they can actually see the amount of fuel they burn per lap and what their delta is, depending on if they're positive or they're negative. And again, you always want to see that positive delta of, listen, I've got more than enough fuel where I can really go play around.
I've got to chuckle the fact that, like I said, this is, at least to my knowledge, the first time in the 2 seasons of the Superspeedway series where we've ended up seeing fuel strategy be this close. And of course, it wouldn't take place at the 2.5-mile track of Daytona or the 2.66-mile track of Talladega. No, it's at the biggest track we go to every season.
See, that's the biggest thing where this is a track where I don't think we've had a fuel mileage race here where everyone's always been focused with, we are going the fastest as possible. We are trying to make sure that we can pull fun moves. We have plenty of space. I mean, we can think of a dumb move and pull it at any straightaway or any corner here, and it probably will work. To now we're trying to look at our gauge and figure out, will I make it from here?
Well, a couple things that I'm looking at here
Plus,
statistically.
You got to think in your mind, too, of, I mean, the fuel mileage that I'm currently getting is the fuel mileage of me taking it easy. When it's go time, I've got my foot to the floor. I'm not saving as much gas or lifting as much. You got to kind of factor in, like, do I have that kind of cash where I can openly full throttle it and hope for the best?
Now, I've run in some Superspeedway races with this type of scenario, and I've had difficulty figuring when is go time. I mean, obviously, we've seen here today the runs that can be generated with the 2-car tandems. The last thing you want to do is press the go button, nobody else be ready, get way out in front, and then when they hit the go button, next thing you know, you're a sitting duck. So, I mean, how do you have to kind of just really be observant of the drivers around you to be able to gauge when they feel it's time to go? Or
well, realistically,
you have to just trust your gut?
If this was your first start, this would be an absolute nightmare. Because as I'm seeing Bronson Stafford trying to wave hi to me, it's kind of the thing of, you're looking at the guys around you and you know how they act. I see Bronson. I know how Bronson acts. Bronson will drop far back and get the most biggest run that he possibly can and come at you. He's got other strategies, but that's the most popular one he goes with. Where I'm looking at the guys behind me, like I know Robert Kenny, Kenny knows when it's go time. And from personal experience, we had past races here. I know how much time it takes us to make that first move and get to the corner and make our final move to the final straightaway. Everyone's got their certain timer that they've got, and they know how long it will take them to make a certain move. So it's going to be a big question of who's going to act first, who's going to be the first shoe to drop.
I'm not sure how much is in it, but looking at the amount of time spent in the pit stall to be able to fuel up the race car, the two drivers that were in for the shortest amount of time, according to what I'm seeing here, was the 61 of Bronson Stafford and the 6 of Dylan Body. So
I wouldn't put too much factor into that, because I'm going to easily promise you every single driver here got the same 14 gallons of fuel. Now, the big question is, how have they used those 14 gallons of fuel?
Okay.
That's really just pit stop variation, and you got a better crew or your crew's on steroids. That's kind of the big thing here.
Well, 15 laps to go here at iRacing Superspeedway, setting up the storylines for the penultimate race of the season next week at Talladega Superspeedway. Now, with yourself and Joey Chapman out in front as long as you've been in this one, it looks like even if Bronson Stafford leads from here to the checkers, he cannot lock up the extra bonus points for most lap sleds. Same said for Mike Tellier and Robert Kenny, so those bonus points are out of play. But I was talking about the fact that Jason Shuey at the time was in position to get the bonus points for the starting to finishing position. Bronson Stafford right now started 8th up in the race lead, +7. Right now, he would be in control of those bonus points, but still a long ways to go. A lot can change.
Absolutely. You see a lot of those guys mad in the pack. All of these guys would love nothing more than to go side by side, battle this thing out, and have fun. But it's the big thing of no one can really make this on fuel right now. No one's confident enough to make this on fuel. So as again, we're trying to still feel this out. And I mean, here's the thing: looking at Bronson Stafford head, that scares some people. Where you look at him like, does he think he has enough fuel that he's so confident to lead this race? I'd say, is he on a better fuel number than me? Does he know something that I don't? And that's the big thing. It's a mind game.
Just as much mental as it is physical. Is Superspeedway Racing. Looks like in a few moments you guys will be encountering Jason Shuey, putting him a lap down. So that caution that the 3 car was hoping for at this point in time does not look like it's going to happen. And
I mean, he's first car lap down, so I mean, easily he could get back into this. He would love nothing more than a caution.
Yeah, but think of all the number of laps he was running all by his lonesome. That's a lot of fuel used up for that 3 machine. So if anybody cannot make
I
it
also will
race,
say he was running at a slower speed, so I'd say he still will not be able to make it. I don't believe he'll be able to make it, but his fuel number won't be as tragic as our fuel number is, since we're traveling an average about 190, 195, while he's traveling about an average of 180.
9 drivers are still up in this lead pack, all the way back to the 29 of Justin Durant. I am actually noticing that both he and David seem to be backing off a little bit more from this lead pack than drafting back up, so they might be a little bit better on fuel.
I will admit,
others.
That's a little bit of a question for me. Yes, you're dropping back, you're trying to get some more distance, because let's say you're trying to save fuel, but there's a certain distance you can get away from the back of one of these cars and still save fuel. I mean, listen, your best fuel savings is, again, still kind of being tucked up and underneath the guy, or at least being within range where you're getting the full effects of that draft. But if you're hanging about 5-6 seconds, or 0.5, 0.6, 0.7 off the car, you're not getting those same fuel savings as everyone else.
All right, so educate me as someone that's used to Energy 2003 in terms of fuel saving. Educate me on how it works as far as iRacing. Like, is there any indication that a spectator would be able to tell that you're throwing in a clutch, that you're half throttling to be able to save some fuel?
Really just listening to the engines would be more or less the most perfect key. I can tell you really everyone in this line right now, we're half throttling. We're not on full throttle. And Bronson probably may be full throttle at some times, but right now he's definitely at half throttle. And you got to think where this is not really a track where you can clutch and still have that much of an advantage. I mean, you will fall back to the car behind. And that's not that big of a deal as long as it's a teammate. But if it's not a teammate, that's where it gets a little bit sketch.
All right, so I'm going to just throw out this scenario, even though I'm not really sure it's ever going to come to fruition. But let's say a caution does fly here in these next 10 laps, and you guys are going to have yourself a late race restart. Are you guys close enough on the numbers where you could then save enough under pacing to be able to make it the rest of the way, or is everybody diving to pit road?
We could possibly save enough under pacing, but at that point, as much as I knock tires, I would prefer fresh tires because, again, those little bit of colder tires, they do provide just a little bit better grip, and they give me a little bit more confidence to make those last lap drastic moves where I'm going all the way from the high lane to the low lane. I mean, listen, that 1% will probably never bother you that much, but it's just having that security where you know that this is the freshest set I can be on.
Right now, you've got your championship 3, if you will, all currently separated. Matt Rod sitting between Stafford and Tellier, and they got Joey Chapman between Tellier and Robert Kenny's. I mean, we've seen the 97 and the 10 work together in the past. Right now, though, they are not lined up nose to tail, so if they were to make a move, they would have to probably shuffle the 60 car out of line, but for the time being, nobody doing any shuffling. Everybody, I think, still playing the fuel game, and we're still waiting to see when does the go button get hit for these guys.
Everyone's waiting for that other hat to drop, and that's going to be the big thing is when does Bronson finally ramp it back up to full speed? When does everyone else really start ramping up to full speed, trying that second lane again?
Now, I'm going to bring this up as well, not trying to jinx Bronson Stafford, but in the last 2 iRacing Superspeedway events we've had here this season, the driver coming around leading the white flag has not been the leader coming around to lead the checkered flag. So don't know if you necessarily want to be out in front when the flagman has the white flag in hand, just based on the trends so far this year.
That's the whole thing about superstitions. It's how much you believe into them. And I really don't know how much that'll play into effect.
8 laps to go, this time by 24 miles remain. Nelly are going to jump up there to the top side. I'm not certain if he just had the momentum there or if he's going to try and go for the race lead. He's going to try and get alongside of Stafford. Now he's going to pick up Robert Kenny. Oh, he is going to get the top spot. 61 might have backed off a little bit there. Looks like you guys checked up a tiny bit down that inside line.
Yeah, everyone had a little bit of a strategy there. Again, I'm not in the team channel. I don't really know what's going on, but looking at those guys, they have a strategy, and it looks like Mike was really wanting to go. I mean, he was beating my back bumper off trying to go. So I'm imagining he feels he is good enough that he can really go full speed the rest of this race. I don't know.
We'll have to wait and see as Robert Kenny, Bronson Stafford, both of them have victories this season at this racetrack. Mike Tellier looking for his first of the season. He is a former winner here. That was last year at iRacing Superspeedway, but trying to pick up win number 3 on the season and first this year at iRacing Superspeedway as the laps continue to tick down. The strategy continues to kind of come to light. Closing in on 5 laps to go here, and 9 drivers still in the hunt, all still up in this lead pack. It looks like Jason Shuey, I'm not certain if he's latched on or not. Well, he might be able to get a whiff of draft off the 29. I was going to bring that up in the fact that we've seen it before in Superspeedway racing. Drivers that have misfortunes of falling off the lead lap, merged in with the lead pack, they kind of become what we call the X factors. Could be a drafting aid to somebody to get up to the front. In this lead group, you have 2 drivers, that make that 3 drivers that have never taken a checkered flag in the series. We have another 2 drivers that have yet to go to victory lane this season that have previously won. Michael Norman winning one of the Dega duels last season, and our own Matthew Rodriguez, who I know you don't like me bringing this up, but no checkered flag since season 1. That winless streak, obviously you want to snap it. I'm going to go back, though, with the confidence. 5th place start last week, 5th place finish. You had the pole tonight, so the numbers don't lie. It's a fact of,
I mean, here's the thing. Racing with teammates and racing against teammates, it is the best thing and the worst thing possible. It's the best thing possible because that's it. You love these guys. You know how they operate. You're used to them. If you pretty much have confidence that you can stick it 3 wide, they're not going to wreck you. But it's also bad because these guys are used to you and you are used to them. You know that if you want to try something, they probably have seen you try it before. And heck, they may have even told you to try it before.
I I was
I
gonna
say,
say, Bronson Stafford stepping out there. I was wondering why he was dropping back because there was no teammate back there to help him with that that run from the back to the front we see him do. And as soon as I say that, though, Joey Chapman steps out of line. So keep an eye on those two.
yeah, realistically, I think they're getting set up for kind of a whole big run. So it's going to be a interesting sight to see how certain drivers react to that.
Let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cars in front of them. You guys got to make a wall of 7 cars off of turn 4. So that way every lane is blocked.
I mean, that's a big thing where, I mean, at this point, gloves are off. It's race 10 of race 12. There is a huge points gap to make up. I mean, I can see a driver throwing a block. And again, like we said earlier this season, the precedent was set that this is how we were going to race.
Yeah, what was it last season that Mike Tellier still was mathematically eligible? About 97 points. So that just gives you an idea of how many points you can make up in one race alone.
I think Robert Kenny set the record this season for how many points you make in one race. I think it came away with like 104, 107.
Yeah.
And it's just ridiculous, but basically he can claw himself back. Let's say Mike won this race and got no bonus points out of it, which is very hard to do, but it's not impossible. Basically got almost minimum bonus points. He's almost pulling about 50, 60 points. Robert Kenny basically pulled 2 or about 1.5 to 2 races on him.
We saw Bronson Stafford have to work his way up to the points lead in the first couple weeks of the season, but then after he took the points lead, had upwards of 134 points between himself and then second place Robert Kenny. So it has definitely been whittled down and maybe whittled down more here today if Tellier and Kenny can keep themselves up here at the front, keep Stafford towards the back.
And if you're wondering if go time is over, I mean, it's pretty much go time. Everyone's made their bed. They are ready to go.
Yeah, looking there, 190 into the corner for the lead pack, and
unfortunately, it's ready or not. Here we go.
Now it's a question of, is everybody able to make it on fuel? If they start sputtering, obviously you got to be aware of that. Jump out of line to avoid running over them. And where does the car run?
I mean, here's the moral conundrum. If you're coming out of turn 4 on the white flag lap going to the start-finish line, you start sputtering. Are you pulling out of line?
No, absolutely not.
I'm going to have that guy hit me into that line, or at least I'm going to try.
They got to avoid you. You keep it where you want it. 2.5 down the back straightaway. It's starting to get a little nerve-wracking here as we may be running for the very first time, if I recall correctly, a caution-free iRacing Superspeedway Series race. We almost had one last year, but had a late race yellow and that possibility. Right now, though, it's looking like we may complete the entire 55-lap event under green flag conditions, unless we end up having a caution come out on the white flag lap. But at that point, I think we still call it caution-free.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. We all know that when it comes down to white flag laps, something's going to happen. Something's going to happen, regardless whether we want it to or not. Someone's going to get turned. Someone's going to be upset. However, we know leading up to that, we just need to make it to the white. And once we make it to the white, that's it. It's gloves off. We're going to make it to the finish one way or another. And let's say I'm looking at Michael Norman in my mirror, and Michael Norman's been on the beneficiary of one of those, gloves are off. I mean, everyone wrecked. Michael Norman found his way through. I mean, Dylan Body's been on so many of the ends of shoulda, coulda, would have been there, could have done it, but I just didn't have enough speed. I didn't have enough time. Look at Joey Chapman and Bronson Stafford in the high lane.
Time to go, they say. They jumped up to the high line with that run. Tellier sees it coming, moving up to block. He's not going to be able to do it. They're going to be 3 wide on the front straightaway. White flag in the air, this time by Chapman's going to take the white. Now the question is, can the 60 and the 61 hold off everybody else in this final 3 miles?
And that's the big thing where everyone knew that move was coming, but do they have enough measures in place to kind of thwart it?
Now Kenny and yourself going to get that big run there to the top side. Dylan Body's going to stay to the bottom. Big side draft down the back straightaway. Numbers game on the inside. Nobody going below that double yellow line just yet. Not sure why they're not utilizing that lane available.
Yeah, that's the thing, and right now it's a numbers game, and we're currently losing it.
3 cars on the bottom, 2 in the middle, 2 up on the top side there with Tellier and Norman. Oh, there goes. Hard hit for Robert Kenny. As off turn number 4, Chapman leads Stafford, Dylan Body's going to jump to the inside on Stafford. Chapman going to make sure that lane doesn't advance, and Joey Chapman finally going to get his first win of his career in the Baadteshop Superspeedway Series.
And what a charge from that last lap.
My goodness. Chapman Stafford made the move out of turn 4 coming to the white. They didn't have a challenge on that top side, but were able to hold it off. And Joey Chapman, so many times. As a matter of fact, if we go back to the first race here this season at iRacing Superspeedway, I mentioned that the leader did not make it back around to win the race. Chapman was that driver earlier on this season. Got hooked on the back straightaway from the race lead, ended up finishing outside of the top 10. Some sweet redemption here this week at iRacing Superspeedway for the 60 car.
I'd say, add a Chappy boy.
Well, the numbers were incorrect, but he's got a podium. And Bronson Stafford, I think, might have been more than willing to kind of help play defense there for Joey Chapman, because Mike Tellier...
I mean, he tried. He died, but he tried.
Mike Tellier, Robert Kenny, though, going to be finishing back in the 8th and 9th positions. So they're going to lose ground to Stafford, who is also going to be tied up with Dylan Body for most positions gained here tonight, 6. So there's some bonus points heading in the direction of the 61. So while Robert Kenny and Mike Tellier were making up forward progress on Bronson Stafford for the points lead, they're going to be losing a little bit of ground here this week with only 2 races remaining on the schedule. Long burnout here, long victory celebration, well earned for Joey Chapman as he picks up win number 1 of his career in the Baadteshop Superspeedway Series. Came into this race 8th in the point standings, was within striking distance of Ryan Potter to be able to bypass him for 7th in points. Was also somewhat close to Michael Norman. I think the gap between those two was about 45 points, if I'm calculating that correctly. Norman finishing 7th place here tonight, so may be able to snipe 6th in points from Norman, depending on how the point system works here. Chapman might have led the most laps here tonight as well, as continues to light up those Goodyear tires in celebration at iRacing Superspeedway. Let's take a look at the finishing results from this one. Only have to show you the first screen here, as only 10 drivers took the green flag. Chapman, Stafford, Rodriguez, your podium finishers here this evening. Dylan Body brings it home in 4th. The Durans in 5th and 6th. David over Justin. Michael Norman finishes in 7th. Mike Tellier 8th. And that was the drivers that made it back to the start-finish line in the lead pack. Robert Kenny we saw get hooked over in the entrance to turn number 3. Hard impact into the outside wall. He's going to finish in 9th place. And Jason Shuey, with the fact that this race went caution-free the entirety, he ended up having a pit road mistake, lost the lead pack, and lost a lap under green flag conditions. He will finish out the evening in the 10th position. Well, it's time to talk with some of our podium finishers here tonight. We will be talking with Matthew Rodriguez, who finished in 3rd in just a little bit. But we're going to leapfrog him because we'll be talking to him post-race. And let's talk with our 2nd place finisher here tonight, Bronson Stafford. Hey Bronson, Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got me?
I got you. What's up?
Man, I'll tell you what. Heck of a move there, coming to the white flag. We've kind of seen that be your MO here at iRacing Superspeedway. We get less and less surprised when that move works, but I was wondering if maybe you might have made that move just a little too early, because you gave him about 3 miles to be able to mount a charge at you after you guys got to P1 and P2.
Yeah, I actually, like, we cleared so quickly into turn 1, I actually got off of him and pulled the brake a little to slow it down, so that way Kenny and the rest of the guys, they would have caught us in the corner, and they would have had to go up early instead of just on the straightaway, and it actually worked out really, really well because it killed the momentum a little bit more for them, and they weren't able to just drive past us like I think they would have been able to otherwise. And then it just came down to who could get the better push, and I think I was able to get Joey back out clear, and then obviously, unfortunately, Kenny got turned across the track. But yeah, we're able to get it done.
Normally, especially at super speedways, there seems to be a commentator's jinx. Whenever we start to talk about fuel mileage, then all of a sudden a caution comes out, all that strategy's out the window, but not the case here today. You guys had to keep a pretty close watch on your fuel numbers here to make sure you could make it to the conclusion. I mean, just how close was it? When could you finally decide, all right, it's time to go. If I run out, I run out?
Um, yeah, so we actually throughout that whole second run, we were having to alternate who was leading, kind of thing, to see who would get the like to be able to save the fuel. Kenny was leading a lot. I think he led up until he was like 0.2 to the good. Then Joey was leading until he was like 0.3. I led until I was about 0.4 to the good, kind of thing, and then just cycled back through. And it got to about 5 laps to go, and everyone was still like a lap good, and we're all like, and pretty much like the whole field was at the same point where it's like, oh yeah, that's more than enough. Then it's not going to burn that away. So we all kind of knew like 5, 6 to go, we were all good on fuel.
All right, so 2 races after tonight with the championship hanging in the balance. So we saw the last couple of weeks, Kenny and Tellier closing in on your points lead here tonight. Though looks like you're going to be getting some bonus points. Both of your competitors not finishing up inside of the top five, so little bit of breathing space going into Dega.
Yeah, we got a lot. We had most positions gained as well. Yeah, yeah, we went from 8th to 2nd. Someone else went from 10th to 4th. So yeah, 6 points, like 6 spots both for us. We had the quickest lap, and we had a lap lead. So um, yeah, so we're getting bonus points. And with Kenny and Mike finishing 8th and 9th, I think it's gonna be pretty hard now for them personally. Unfortunately, we got 2 races to go. Anything can still happen. If we get more than 10 cars, I think it's still very much up there. But if we're getting 10-ish cars, I don't even think finishing 10th with them winning will be enough. I'm not sure because the point system's so crazy, as you know. Um, but I think I was like 80 points entering this race, and I'm probably gonna leave with over 100 gap. So it'll be I don't know. I think it'll be really tough. We'll have to see what happens. Ask me next week, and we'll see.
Yeah, certainly going to be interesting, as you said, that unorthodox point system. So definitely going to be interesting to follow up with this next week at Talladega. But Bronson, great run for you here tonight. It was a lot of fun to watch you kind of pull that back to the front, move several times here tonight. Almost picked you up another victory here this evening, but still great runner finish for you. And now we'll give you the opportunity for some thank you sponsors and shoutouts.
Oh yeah, the entire team. I think we really played again tonight, showing how good we are with super speedways. We all pit together, had really good pit stops. Were able to save the fuel, work each other through the lead and whatnot. I told Joey too. I was gonna tandem him. I was saving the motor. I was gonna tandem him, come into the end, and give him the win, kind of thing. A couple weeks ago, we had another league race, and we net code together in 3 and 4, going for the lead, going for the win on the white flag at Daytona in another league, and it took him and I out. It gave Tom the win, who doesn't race here too often unless he has like the free time, but had to give him back one. I feel so. It's not the same stage, but it's still finally a league win for him. So hopefully he enjoys that, has some fun with it. But no, it was a good night just for everything for the team. But obviously, everyone there that makes that happen. And then up here, Seth, I know you were broadcasting with Matt Rod again while he was racing, and obviously, putting it on, and then Matt and Mike for throwing it all together with the league and stuff. It's fun. I hope next season we expand. I don't know what's going on for next season. I hope we can get a little more cars or change it up or something. But it's been fun regardless. So we have a good group.
Yes, indeed. That's Bronson Stafford. He's your second place finisher here tonight at iRacing Superspeedway. He will extend his points lead heading to Talladega next week. We'll find out by how much once we get there. But until then, congratulations on the great run, Bronson, and talk to you next week.
Yeah, thanks, Seth.
All right, let's go down to victory lane. Let's talk with tonight's race winner, Joey Chapman. Hey, Joey, Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got me?
Yeah, loud and clear, bud.
I'll tell you what, I think there's just one word, big bold letters, finally, that
Yeah.
describes tonight. I mean, man, you've been so close so many times, even going back to the first race here at the beginning of the season, leading down the back straightaway on the white flag lap, getting hooked, not being able to close out the victory. You finally get a W here in the Baadteshop Super Speedway Series. I mean, just first off, how much of a load off your mind is that?
Oh man, I mean it's ridiculous. It's kind of one of those things that after you get denied it so many times, there's a point where you lose them every way, and you're like, all right, then I'll finally get it. Then you keep losing them, and it's just like, oh, I guess it's just not gonna happen. So it feels really good to finally get one. I really appreciate Bronson's help there on the last lap. Him and I had kind of talked throughout the race. He had let me know that he wanted to work with me on the white flag, and then when I saw him go back, nothing was said to me, but I kind of knew that I needed to go back, and was having to do a lot of watching fuel there on that last run. I was in the lead with about 10 laps to go, something like that, and I looked at my fuel. Actually, it was close to like 15 laps to go, I believe, and then I looked at my fuel and I was like, oh wow, I'm about a quarter lap short. So I had to start saving fuel, and I went back there with Bronson, and he told me if they don't do anything, half a lap to go, let's just go to the front. And the great thing about these cars at this racetrack, you're able to suck up to them really good, and you get alongside them, you can just blow right by them, and yeah, man, finally, it feels good to finally get one.
We obviously saw that fuel was really the big story here in the closing stages of this race. And, maybe the casual iRacing driver is used to run at Talladega, used to run at Daytona, but unless they're in maybe a super speedway series, they don't run iRacing super speedway as often. Just how much more difficult is it to save fuel at a track like this, a longer 3-mile racetrack, than your typical Daytona or Talladega?
Well, it is a little more difficult because of the banking, and your cars are so fast in the corners. So it's yeah, and you got to try to stay right on top of each other without wrecking each other to be in the draft. And I'm not gonna act like I'm the smartest guy. I regurgitate all this information from the guys that have been doing it a lot longer than me. But you're riding behind these guys, and you got to stay right on top of them. But it's just if you're running half throttle but you still got a decent gap, you're still going to be burning fuel. So you just have to be really strategic here, and you just don't want to be in the lead. And we saw several times in the middle of the race. I can't remember if it was before. I believe it was after the pit stop. Everybody started fanning out. Somebody would get the lead, and they'd say, "I don't want to lead," and then the next person would go out, and next thing I knew, I was in the lead, and that happened twice because nobody just wanted to lead and burn up that fuel, which I understand, and so it causes the race to kind of slow down. But it's also a testament to the guys that we have running here on a weekly basis. We got a lot of clean drivers, obviously. You know, you're afforded a lot more room on iRacing Super Speedway, but these guys, as we go throughout a season, everybody starts to run really smart and get cleaner, and everybody respected everybody out on the racetrack today. And it shows when we have two straight races without a yellow flag. So I'm very proud of everybody that does this and knows. I mean, it sucked for Jason to be a lap down there at the end because of his pit stop, but still, for everybody to save fuel the way that we did and then to come back in one piece, except for I believe Kenny and Bronson coming across the line, I think that's just incredible and really a testament to the guys we got running.
Now, obviously, I know the strategy week after week coming in has been go out there, finally get that victory. Now that you have it, 2 races still left in the schedule. So does it change up the strategy at all here for these final 2 events?
No, I mean, I don't have any ambition of trying to win the championship or anything like that at this point. It's just a matter of you go out there and you try to find the gaps, and you try to wait for the right moves. And it's just you could change. I've changed my strategy a million times before and been bitten a million times, so it's just a matter of you got to let the race come to you. I know Bronson, excuse me, referenced it in his interview, but we were running another league race at Daytona about 2 weeks ago, and a very, very, very competitive race. And that was probably the best race that I had ever ran. And part of it is because you just run this series and you get really comfortable making moves and learning what to do with the draft. And I led the most laps in that. And obviously, we had a big time net code on the final lap that took me out of the lead and took Bronson out as well and caused a big wreck and gave our teammate Tom Bourne the win. But at the end of the day, it's just one of those things where you just got to run it, and if it comes to you, great. If it doesn't, great. I mean, you can't really predict these things, and that's what makes a league like a super speedway league like this so much fun, because every week you go in and you're not like, oh man, we're at a Martinsville this week. I don't run good at Martinsville. I don't really want to run. It's just, oh, we're at a super speedway. I could win this thing. So you come into it with just the mindset of, you kind of gauge how the racing is going throughout the race, and then you just go for it. And like I said, I've tried switching up strategy before and it's never paid off for me. And what paid off today was just having a teammate that was committed to me, and I I appreciate the help, and I'm glad to finally have the win. But I also look at that last lap and I think to myself, all right, what do you do if next time that teammate isn't committed to your bumper? Would you have gone left? Would you have gone right? Would you have gotten wrecked? What would have happened? So I mean, that's just the thing, is these races, we see Bronson up front a lot, we see Kenny up front a lot, simply because those guys know how to make the right moves at the right time. Do they always win? No, but you typically are screaming their name on the last lap. So you do have to be a good super speedway racer, and I believe at Sky Motorsports, I think we're all pretty good super speedway racers. And but yeah, man, finally have one of these things. It's a really good feeling. Been down bad sick this week, so it feels good to cap it off with a victory and get that monkey off my back. And not gonna relish this one too long, because I'm ready for number 2 and number 3 after that.
We may end up seeing number 2 and number 3 maybe sooner than we think. Still a couple races left on the schedule. But Joey, congratulations once again on the victory here tonight. And now we'll give you the opportunity here, hand the mic over to you for some victory lane thank you sponsors and shout outs.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, I do want to thank my teammate Bronson, long time friend of mine, and I know he felt really bad after what happened at Daytona a couple weeks ago, and I don't think he owed me anything, but I know that I appreciate his help, and I've always loved racing with him. So it feels good to finally see that Dollar General scheme in my mirror at the end on the last lap. But so yeah, I just got to thank the guys for helping me throughout the race, and now the primary sponsor on my car now, Dano's Seasoning, based out of Louisville, Kentucky. If you're somebody that's looking for a low sodium seasoning, only 50 milligrams of sodium per serving, no MSG, no sugar, yum yum, get you some. You'd almost think I work for the people. I do. But no, they're great. And obviously Country Boy Brewing, always loved having them on the car, and just everybody, FRN, doing the races. Obviously, I've been a part of the broadcast booth some, and it's always a great time. And everybody that helps the efforts at Sky Motorsports, it's just really incredible, the amount of camaraderie and the amount of teamwork that we do. And you know, it's good to finally get one of these things and not be a punching bag for myself this week. So hell yeah, we finally got one.
Joey Chapman finally gets that victory here in the Baadteshop Super Speedway Series. Congratulations once again on a job well done. Go and enjoy that win, and maybe we can see you go 2 in a row next week at Talladega.
Absolutely. Thank you, Seth.
Now, normally, under these circumstances, we would interview our third place finisher, which is Matthew Rodriguez, who was joining me in the booth. But he's a guy who dons many hats here in this series, including adminship. And he is currently in the process, I believe, of doing some adminship work. So we are not going to disturb him in the middle of that. Maybe if we end up doing this, which I hope we do, next week at Talladega, of having him in the broadcast booth again, we can talk to him about this week, next week, and get some of his final thoughts from that. But next week, these drivers head to the penultimate race at Talladega Super Speedway. Obviously, there's going to be a points gap growing from Bronson Stafford back to Robert Kenny and Mike Telly. The question is just how big a gap will it be? Is it manageable enough to be able to close it up and have at least a couple of drivers mathematically in hunt for the championship when we come back here in 2 weeks' time to iRacing Superspeedway with the championship on the line? Going to be a lot of fun to find out. Hope you guys will join us for that. But thank you for tuning in here tonight to coverage of the NSRA 165 at iRacing Superspeedway. Once again, Joey Chapman, first-time winner here in the Baadteshop Superspeedway Series. Congratulations to him. Thank you once again for tuning in tonight. Join us next Sunday night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the green flag to fly at Talladega. For Matthew Rodriguez, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday night, folks, as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.